Call the meeting to order. This is the January 26th Fairfield Town and Planning Zoning Commission. First order of business is bills and communications, meeting minutes. Everybody get to read the minutes? For a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrett, second by Commissioner Coleman. Anybody have any questions? No? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Voted unanimously to approve the minutes. Now on to old business. Number 2A, 1851 North Benson Road, re-subdivision application of Van Brod Estates, LLC for 2 lots in an A zone. Public hearing was held on 12/15/15, expires 2/18/16. Those present were Wagner, Alessi, Barrett, Francis, McAleese, Corcoran, and Noonan. Commissioner Coleman has recused herself, so everybody except Commissioner Ford will be voting on this one tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, is that right? 5?
Six.
6?
That's correct. You have 6.
Okay. Any motion?
Yeah, if you want me to,
Yeah, go give us
I went over it last time, but just again, to refresh your memory, this is a re-subdivision and oversized lot fronting on North Benson Road, Connecticut Route 135. In the residential A zone, the minimum lot size, as you know, is 9,375 square feet. The proposed lot area would be for Lot A, 11,520 square feet, and for Lot B, 13,733 square feet. The existing parcel has a house and a drive curb cut. The proposed Lot A would utilize the existing curb cut. A portion of the existing house would remain on the proposed Lot B with a new curb cut. The engineering department has reviewed the submitted site distance plan and profile, and the state of Connecticut had reviewed and approved the plan. What the commission requested last time when it was tabled is a follow-up from the town engineer having to confirm, in fact, that she is satisfied with the information submitted for the line of sight, and that the state, and I think we sent you a copy of her follow-up report, and if you just look at the last sentence, it basically says, therefore my concerns raised by my December 13th email has been appropriately addressed, provided that the applicant can obtain a state permit from the state of Connecticut, necessary work including removal of trees within the state right-of-way. As you know, we did receive a letter from the state that they received the application and the permit, and there were some relatively minor conditions that they listed. So that, Mr. Chairman, was kind of what you had requested, the reason for the table last time. And that's all I have right now.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Move to approve by Commissioner Barrett. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner McAleese. Go ahead, you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, this, it's a 2-lot subdivision. It complies with our regulations. There was some concern over sight lines, and we tabled it, and they're now acceptable to the town engineer, and also based on the letter she received from the Department of Transportation regarding, making those sight lines available. That is a concern on a subdivision, especially on a busy road like North Benson Road. But now it meets our regulations, because our regulations, they sight line as determined adequate by the town engineer. So that is our word on that. I mean, there was some comment at the public hearing about it being too high or out of character. Unfortunately, we can't deny subdivisions because they're out of character or too high. Our regulations define what is permitted height, and if this height is permitted by our regulations, then we approve it. We define what's too high in setting what our regulations are. We have height regs, setback regs, and to my understanding, it meets all of the technical requirements of the subdivision regulations.
That's correct.
And therefore, I would vote to approve it.
Okay. Anything further?
I don't have anything really to add except to agree with Commissioner Barrett. It seems like they've covered all the points we asked for. They've come back expeditiously every time we've asked them for additional information, and they meet our requirements. So I would tend to approve this as well.
Anybody else have any comments?
Nothing more to add.
Okay. Nothing? All right, I tend to agree with Commissioner Barrett. There were these outstanding issues, but they've been addressed. This is just another one of these subdivisions that we've seen on North Benson Road, and it meets all our regulations, so I will be voting for this application as well. All right, with that, let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Next item, 229, 245 Lakeside Drive, request of David Legardo for 100% relief of a $9,140 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A-zone. The public hearing was held on 1/12/16. Present were Wagner, Alessi, Barrett, Coleman, Francis, Kennelly, McAleese, Corcoran, and Noonan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So everybody will be voting on this one tonight. Mark and Tommy will be voting on this one. Okay?
All right, real quick, just what was basically outlined at the hearing on June 13th, 2006. The TPZ Commission approved this two-lot re-subdivision. The bonded improvements included drainage, landscaping, and site stabilization. We do have a report from the engineering department that they did do a site inspection, and all the work has been completed as per their requirements, and they recommend 100% release of the bond.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve by Commissioner McAleese, second by Commissioner Francis. Anybody have any comments? No? It's been recommended to release the bond. I have nothing further to say. Ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Next, compliances. 325 Reef Road, compliance application of Mark Foreman for a sign plan in the Neighborhood Design District.
Mr. Chairman, for these next two items, Mr. Corcoran will be sitting for Mr. Wagner, and Mr. Noonan will be sitting for Mr. Kennelly, unless he arrives. It's
Okay.
This first item, 321 Reef Road, also known as 325 Reef Road. In your packet, we've included a copy of a photo of the front facade of this building, just to kind of get, it's two doors and an aerial photo that shows you where this building is. If you know where 7-Eleven is on Reef Road, next to 7-Eleven is a AT&T switching building, and then the next building down is this two-story brick office building. They're proposing a 39 square foot ground sign to identify some tenants here. It's a two-sided sign with aluminum panels with vinyl graphics on them. It's not internally illuminated. They are limited by, our sign regulations require a minimum letter height here of 6 inches, so that requirement is intended to limit the number of folks you might be able to identify, and have to identify them in a way that's legible, so you don't have to slow down to a crawl to read it. And we've set that at the 2-lane road with the posted speed limit is a 6-inch minimum. For wider roads, it's a little higher. So it complies with the overall size requirements. They're proposing it back 25 feet from the edge of the sidewalk. There was a site plan there. It doesn't have to be that far back. It can be, this is a neighborhood district. I think they may have thought they needed a 25-foot setback. This is a neighborhood design district, so they could be as close as 10 feet. The reason I put the aerial photo in there is to show that the adjacent property driveway is on the northerly side of its respective property, and this would be, so this sign would not have any visibility issues for any adjacent driveway. So they have, if you look at the front facade, they're fairly limited on what they can do as far as wall signage is concerned, so they're just looking to establish some basic ID for some of their tenants within the building.
Any questions, staff?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of the applicant. Is he present?
Sure, go ahead.
Aren't there
Well, you can ask, yes. through us.
aren't there parking spaces along that driveway? I know I've seen cars parked.
Yes,
looks
if you
like
can see,
through
if
the
you look in the
sign.
aerial photograph, There are parallel spaces along what would be the northerly property line for this property, yes.
So how does somebody open their car door if they're parked right next to the sign?
Well, they would have to...
Do they lose a parking space as a result of this?
No, I think they're showing kind of graphically in this photo, they're showing it being between the first parking space and the street, which they can accomplish. You required a 10-foot setback here. They could set it at a clearance, so even if it was, I don't believe it's adjacent to a parking space, but if it were, they could set it at a height that the only impediment would be the poles, not necessarily the height of the sign itself, but the two poles. But I don't believe, I believe they can place it between the street and the first parking space so that it would not be an impediment to a parking space. But you are correct, there are parking spaces there.
If that's the case, how far will the sign be from the street? We said 20?
Well, they're proposing it to be 25 or 26 feet
right?
from the back edge of the sidewalk. I think if it's back that far, it may run the risk of doing what Commissioner Coleman is suggesting it might do. I believe they were mistaken in how far back from the street they really need to be. 25 feet is the norm in the minimum in the design commercial district. This is a neighborhood design district, so they can move that forward, so it's 10 feet off the back edge of the sidewalk. You might want to, if you're inclined to approve it, you might want to make that suggestion so it doesn't interfere with the parking space. It does. That picture shows it graphically too close, I believe. Where the pavement meets the sidewalk is essentially the property line. The leading edge of the sign would have to be at least 10 feet back.
Parking is horrible in that location too.
I don't know sitting here whether they are or they're not.
You have a question? I mean, Commissioner Coleman brings up a good point. At this point, we don't know if if parking spots are being taken up by this or not, right? That's the issue we're facing here. I mean, we said 25 foot back. We're assuming that the first parking spot is not 30 feet from the curb. That's the assumption we're going with right now, correct?
Right, but we can certainly, if you want to hold this over and we can address those questions, we can certainly do so.
I think there's a couple of unknowns here that have to be answered, I think, before we just approve this, is my thinking. You have any comments?
Yeah, I would like to know if they're painted, if they're marked, and then we could determine better.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think, I mean, normally we're insisting on 25 feet because of this district. It's not required, and it might be a better design to have a little closer, and maybe it wouldn't interfere. So I think Commissioner Coleman's questions are good, and maybe we just table this?
Yeah, you've got,
Make a motion.
you certainly have time within your time frame to do that, and we can get some additional information for you.
So I will move to table this to, whenever it comes back to us where we have additional information to answer the questions from Commissioner Coleman and Commissioner Francis.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion right now is by Commissioner Barrett to table it, and second by Commissioner Coleman. Any other comments on this? Is there a vote? All those in favor of the table, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Table motion. Item tables. Next item, 309 Stilson Road, compliance application of ABC Sign Company for a sign plan in the Design Commercial District.
Okay, you may recall that this similar application was denied back in their December meeting. The main reason for that was that proposal, well, let me just back up for a second. This is on the corner of Stilson Road and Black Rock Turnpike is a mobile gas station, and next door to that, moving up Stilson Road, is this building, which is the home of this Fairfield Urgent Care facility and women's health care on the second floor. You may recall that the thrust of this application is to take what is now a non-illuminated sign and make them illuminated because they, being an urgent care facility that is open at certain hours after dark, want to make sure that their patients can find them readily. The signs comply in terms of our lighting requirements in that the background remains opaque and only the copy illuminates. This was denied in December because they were proposing to stack the Fairfield Urgent Care sign with the affiliates and women's care above it, which was really above the first floor level, which is prohibited. So they brought that sign down to the first floor level adjacent to the entrance rather than stacking it on top of the Fairfield Urgent Care side on the Stilson Road facade. The facade that faces north on the Black Rock side, there's only one sign proposed, and it replaces an existing sign of the same size. The only difference there is this sign is internally illuminated. So they've attempted to address the reasons that this was denied last time because of that second wall sign was stacked on top of the first and above, and they've kind of changed the color scheme to kind of separate the look of those two tenants.
All right. Anybody like to make a motion on this?
Motion to approve it?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman. Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Anybody have any questions regarding this sign? Comments?
Yeah,
Barretts?
I mean, this is not the first application this business has had in front of us for signs. I mean, I think it's about the fifth or sixth. There was a whole bunch of them that were denied and came back. I mean, is there really are they kind of asserting there's some problem with people actually seeing it, or just because they're open at night and people don't know they're open at night or can't find it?
I don't know that to be the case, but that's what we permit illuminated signs. Their fellow competitors have illuminated signage in other locations in town. I think that may be part of it, but I don't know. I haven't heard firsthand any stories of folks not being able to find it in an emergency, but that being said, someone that's in need of urgent care, it doesn't hurt to have an illuminated sign that they can see.
Yeah,
but it is.
Yeah, I mean, I like the building and I like the use, and I think it's great to have these in town. If you are in need of urgent care, it's nice to know we have such facilities. But I'm more of, this is more of a competitive thing than actual people aren't finding the place. I mean, even the urgent is, and I know we don't regulate color on these signs. I know that it's the size and the shape, and if it complies with our requirements, we should approve it. And then, probably we should. It's just. I don't know. It's just going to be a bright sign, and I'm not really crazy about the design, but if it meets our requirements, I suppose we should approve it.
Anyway, assured that it meets all our sign requirements for size.
It does.
We removed the second floor one, so.
In my opinion, it complies.
I have to tend to agree with you. I noticed the one we just approved, and between the lighting sign that we put over there and everything that's going on in the window over by Dunkin' Donuts, I think this is, like you said, is a tit-for-tat situation that we're seeing here. And I'm not happy about the other one and what's going on and the way that looks over there. I mean, if it complies, it complies. I know it's facing the mobile station on this side, and I know on the Stilson side, at least it's facing a shopping center. I know there's residents on the other side of the building, so I wouldn't like to see an illuminated sign at least facing that, which they don't have one. So, but I mean, it does comply with our regulations, so I will be voting for this, even though I'm not entirely in favor of the taste of it. Anybody else have any comments?
I would tend to agree. The fact that it complies is what is most important for me. If the neighbors were closer, the residential neighbors were closer on the other side, I'd be concerned. But I think there's a parking lot and a driveway, and that driveway, like a commercial driveway that leaves, and then the house's own driveway, so I'm not too concerned. I think it's far enough away. but it complies anyway, so.
All right, the motion on the table is to approve. There's no other comments? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. Next item is a public hearing. We'll adjourn for 2 minutes.
We are now doing this.
Call the meeting back to order. We're now in our public hearing. First item of business.
I think he's doing Oceana Restaurant.
First item of business is 300 Quincy Street. Request of Alfonso Camarada Jr. for 100% release of a $17,799 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone.
Good evening, Commissioners. Christopher Russo, Q&R Associates, One Post Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. Here on behalf of Alfonso Camarada Jr. for 100% release of his bond. All the work has been completed, all the subdivision improvements. Laura Pooley has been out to the site, the tree warden's been out to the site, and we're just asking for full release of the bond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public like to comment on this? Nope. Counselor, I guess you have no rebuttal? So I'll close this item. Next item, 70 Reef Road, special permit application of Oceana Mediterranean Taverna to enclose existing outdoor dining area in a central design district. Attorney Fallon.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm pleased to be here tonight representing the applicant, Oceana Mediterranean Taverna. With me tonight is Antonio Ninavaggi. Where's Antonio? Who is our owner and operator, and Mr. John Doyle, our architect of Doyle Coffin Architects, who I'll introduce shortly. Everybody, I think, is familiar with Oceana. It's been sort of a landmark over the last decade in the downtown center, one of our more popular and most popular and well-regarded restaurant. Along with a lot of other great restaurants and activities, it's become a wonderful catalyst for the downtown that we have and the center area that we're very proud of. What we're proposing here tonight, as you know, is there's an existing dining area now that has been previously approved and used for about a decade for seasonal outdoor dining. It constitutes 479.5 square feet, and we've operated there on a 6-month basis over the last, as I say, decade. What we wish to do here, and what John Doyle will elaborate on in a second, is a few things. We want to make the overall exterior appearance of this very much landmark building more attractive, more welcoming, and you've received the architectural elevations, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We also want to provide additional comfort and convenience and ambiance to our patrons, and therefore we're seeking permission to convert this seasonal exterior outdoor area to a permanent area of additional patron floor area of 448 square feet. As you can see, it's somewhat less than what the existing patron floor area is for seasonal use, but what it will allow us to do is provide a year-round dining option for patrons who want to enjoy the streetscape, the scenic downtown, the views and vistas, the gazebo, and so on and so forth. We did go to the Zoning Board of Appeals on December 3, 2015, and they, after public hearing, unanimously granted certain variances with regard to this matter. The first were technical insofar as we needed variances of section 12.7.6 involving the street line setbacks from Sherman Street and Reef Road. The proposal that's before you tonight, and as approved by the ZBA, actually is going to reduce the existing street setback nonconformities. Currently on Sherman Street, the existing building is located 1.9 feet from the street line, and the existing awning 2.4 feet from the street line. Our proposed awning, as shown on the plans we've submitted, will in fact be set back 2.5 feet from the street line. Similarly, and perhaps more importantly, with regard to Reef Road, the Zoning Board of Appeals approved a new awning that will be 5.7 feet from Reef Road street line, which is what we present to you tonight, whereas the present setback from Reef Road is 0. The reason I think that's important, and another benefit beyond the aesthetics, is, as you can see from the site plan that was submitted, This proposed enclosure will also improve very much the existing sightline visibility from Reef Road and the Sherman Street intersection, because the building now sits at a 0 setback, and it will now be situated at 5.7 feet back. So it improves that sightline. The ZBA also granted us a variance of section 28.6.12 with regard to the conversion of the outdoor area to a permanent 448 square feet of year-round patron floor area, based upon the technical parking requirements. I think overall, the board found that the proposed architectural improvements, and we hope you will too, to accommodate this new enclosure area, will harmonize and complement the center design business district. It's certainly consistent with the town plan of conservation and development, which states among its goals for the center design business district that parking requirements for restaurant uses in the area be modified, and that parking requirements for, quote, after-hour uses, and it specifically refers to restaurants, be made more flexible. And I think what we're proposing is consistent with that goal. Before I go on and just briefly summarize in terms of a few points, I'd like to call on John Doyle, our architect. He'll briefly walk you through, I think, what you already have, but he'll show you what we propose here by way of renovations, and I'll have a few closing remarks.
For the record, my name is John Doyle. I'm from Doyle Coffin Architecture in Ridgefield. And I know this is very small, so it's tough to see. I hope you all, if you don't have a copy of the drawings there at your table, then I have an extra set for everybody. Just by way of orientation, this is Reef Road here, and you can see Sherman Street, and where the blue canopy is the property in question. In each of these drawings, you can see it before and after. The red building here is the same, and you can see the patio, and then the covered patio here. I'm just going to flip up to the plan here. And really, John covered it all, but I'll just say that the existing porch extending out to Reef Road, it really hugs the property line at Sherman Street and at Reef Road. What we're doing, you can see that the stop sign is located within the fence of the existing enclosure here. What we're doing is we're pulling it back, and you can see also that there's space on the southern edge of the property here, on the southern edge of the canopy. So what we're doing is we're pushing it back from Reef Road and then stretching it along the full face of the building. And what that does is it brings it really, if you go back to the aerial for a second, you can see how it brings it back into conformity, really lines up with the front edge of the funeral home across the street and kind of makes it more of a straight line. So these houses in a row, the Firehouse Deli and a couple of these others along the way, it kind of makes a more continuous line down the street. Widens the sidewalk, improves the sight lines coming out of Sherman Street, which was a problem before, and makes for a better situation. Elevation-wise, we're proposing a canopy structure. It has a hard base to it. It's about 27 inches tall. The overall height is roughly the same as it is now. I think it's about 10 feet at the 10 or 12 feet at the sidewalk side. You can see the sidewalk width is much wider, so it's kind of a nice continuous wide sidewalk from really the post road all the way down, at least to the police department. It'll be fully open in the summertime, and it'll be zip closed in the wintertime, so they could do four-season dining out there. And the rest of the existing building stays the same. Maybe it's a new paint job on it. There's two renderings of the exterior. Give you a view of what it might look like from the street, and it gives you an idea of the scale and what's proposed here. And I'll leave John with the rest. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Mr. Doyle. You said it's going to be zip-down windows?
Yeah, I believe it's a system.
It's not just zip down, it's a clear plexiglass system.
How do they come on and off?
Pardon?
How do they come on and off?
They roll up to the top, and they're
So there's a zipper?
side. I can show you, I do have a detail.
It's very similar to the system that you see at the Grey Goose. That gives you a frame of reference.
I understand the setback, the setback situation, moving it back. But the way it is now, I mean, you could pretty much see through when you're coming down the road to make a right-hand turn at that stop sign. I don't remember the name.
Well, you really, my office is 2 doors up, and you really...
Sherman, I know.
Sherman, you really can't. I mean, because you have the posts and the beams and whatnot, and that extra 5 feet really does sort of obstruct. If I come out of that street, I don't know how many times a day, this will improve that because it will remove all structure from that sight line.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Kennelly.
Thanks. Mr. Fallon, I should look at your statement of intent, which is always excellent. The question for you, if you do know or if the architect knows, what's the current four-season indoor floor space for this restaurant?
You mean, I don't have that information.
You don't know?
I don't have that information.
Would the architect have it?
What's the indoor patron floor area?
Currently?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great, just if I could know. It probably is, where, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm trying to get a sense of how much we're expanding the total four-season.
585.
So the current is 585?
The current permanent indoor is 585. The seasonal outdoor that's been operated 6 months of the
Right.
year for 10 years
Right.
is 479 and a half.
Okay.
And the area of conversion would be somewhat less than that, to 448.
Okay, so we're basically going to increase by about 45% the amount of four-season accommodation for
Right,
guests, for patrons.
as I'll get into, yes, after
Right.
we answer your questions, I'll get into, it's not going to really change dramatically the operating patterns of the restaurant, because 6 months of the year, that's how we've been operating anyway, with a slightly larger outdoor area. But I'll discuss that in a second. We gave you the details on the enclosure area, but again, if you want to see it in operation, it's very similar to what you've approved and you've seen down at the Grey Goose, which was also which was also a conversion of an area previously approved for seasonal outdoor dining to year-round.
Commissioner Barrett, do you have a question?
Now, what's the climate control for this area that's year-round? Like,
Pardon?
How is it heated in the winter?
That really hasn't been determined yet, but it'll probably be space heaters. From the building blowing into the space.
Again, like similar to the Goose.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, it's
I mean, ideally...
pretty cold in January, so.
Ideally, it would be a radiant floor, but we're still working out the details of that.
Commissioner McAleese, did you have a question?
I do.
Commissioner Corcoran?
Going from the existing plan to the proposed, it looks like are we losing 3 parking spaces? Because it shows wheel stops, and it looks like it's marked as parking spaces, but then at the southern end, I guess the southern end of that?
You're not losing, there's not a real parking space there. There's some planters there now, and there is a stop there, but it's not a parking space.
Okay.
I think it's a stone sidewalk area, so it's not an area to be parked on now.
All right, it was unclear. On the drawing, it looks like 3, because it says 3 wheel stops. I thought that meant there was
Right, with
head-in parking.
and I think it's just to set back. I'm sorry, I think those are just there to set back separate the sidewalk from the actual parking lot.
Commissioner Corcoran?
Both of my questions have been addressed.
Okay.
If I look at the as-is drawings, it looks like an historic colonial building. There's a certain quaint charm to it. Was there any concern about totally losing that feeling in the proposed drawings?
We don't think so, Commissioner, because as the elevation indicates, we're not really going to change the structure of the existing building. We do propose probably to paint it, but the only change here is going to be taking the area that's presently here for outdoor dining and making it suitable for year-round use, but the building itself is not going to change.
I think it does change the appearance of it because you can see through the overhang, thank you.
And you'll-
And you won't be able to once it's zipped in.
Well, you will for the seasonal time, for 6 months of the year. I mean, this is not, this is the view of what it would look like at this time of year, which I don't think is unattractive, but to answer your question, in the summer and spring and fall, it will still be outdoor dining.
The intent for the restaurant is to have it as open as possible, as long as possible.
Yeah, do I have a question about that, Mr. Fallon? I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. I noticed in your renderings, it appears almost like an extension of what appears to be sort of the brick edging at the bottom.
Yes.
Is that going to be in the design carried forward? Because obviously currently what you have is a more impermanent looking, more, again, more see-through sort of design currently. Is this going to be a brick structure of some kind? Like a low, say, knee-high brick structure that will enclose all the way around, and then on top of that will be the zip-up material?
That was the intent, but it would probably be, the foundation is a parged block right now. So it'd probably be the same, and it'd be slightly lower set, and slightly set in so that the connections to the existing building work well.
The reason I ask is because when we talk about changing the shape from the more square to the more rectangular, carrying the length of the width of the building, the front of the building, I appreciate that. I like that a lot. But I think that there are certainly some aesthetic concerns related to this idea of something that's maybe about knee-high or higher, that is going to continue continue almost to be sort of like an extension of the original kind of colonial building, which I think there may be some real aesthetic concerns about. So is the rendering I'm seeing here that you have there, is that a definitive rendering, or is it just sort of, it seems to me you can almost create the structure with something similar to what you have with the awning currently, just by simply creating a different awning structure rather than having to do this. But is there an architectural need?
Well,
Is there an architectural need to have a stronger base, a more stone,
Well, I would say in the winter months, especially on weekends like this one, there's snow and ice and so forth that would be piled up against it. So we're trying to make a more permanent base to it, something that's not going to, where somebody shoveling or snow blowing into the canopy might bend the bottom or break it. We're trying to make it more permanent than that. However, there's different ways to accomplish this. We could look at it another way too.
So ultimately, there's a trade-off there between aesthetics versus what would be something that's a stable, something that wouldn't lead to the restaurant owners, for example, having to reinvest in, say, new posts or something if they were damaged. That's
Right,
something, and also maybe make it a little bit warmer and more airtight.
Exactly, airtight, and then also allow the heat to be at the base at the perimeter, perhaps, as one of the options. So that was the basis of our concept.
And we did also think that it's a matter of aesthetics. We could definitely be wrong, but we were thinking of the brick as an enhancement architecturally to the building and the streetscape, to give it a more of a sense of permanent, to create a certain brick base here. We thought that would be attractive, and do think that would be attractive, but.
Commissioner Francis?
Yes, I agree. It is more attractive. I'm not sure that I think it's attractive to change it from red to white.
Oh.
I think it blends with that street.
We're not married to that.
Red.
Although we all know,
I find it very attractive in red.
we're not, our intent here was to show that we intended to give the building a cosmetic upgrade. And although we all know, that you don't regulate color, having said that, we take very strongly, if there was a strong preference expressed for purposes of the record, that the existing red be maintained. We're not married.
It's shingle, isn't it?
Yes.
Right now. Are you changing it to siding?
No, we're just going to paint it. So.
Because it blends with Firehouse Deli and it contrasts with Shaughnessy. I don't know. I think it's always been.
Yeah, again, we're not married to the color. We were just trying to demonstrate that, we do want to cosmetically improve the building. But if red is the color of choice, we're comfortable with it, and we'll still cosmetically enhance the building.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fallon, I'm a big advocate for outdoor dining, but on the other hand, I have to be careful because there is sometimes resistance to outdoor dining. And amongst those concerns are interrelationships with parking and things like that.
Which I'm going to do.
So here's what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you for free legal advice. How do I, when I get to executive session, refute concerns some may raise that by doing this, I'm opening the door to many more restaurants looking to press for permanent dining, which is sometimes, some folks on the commission in the past, not necessarily ones who are here now, have some worries about that. So what would you say as far as this being precedent-setting or things I should be concerned about that might have less to do with this application, but its implications for other applications in the future?
They're really going to think that we got together beforehand, and you gave me the segue, because that was where I was going to go in terms of my follow-up remarks, and Mr. Doyle obviously is going to be here. I don't mean to cut him off, but here would be the answers to that question. This 448 square foot area that we seek to convert has been used for over a decade, seasonally for 6 months of a year. So that certainly establishes some strong operational patterns. What it shows us, and what has been showed by the experience of the Grey Goose, there's also over at Chelsea. Chelsea, before it was Chelsea, was the Greenhouse Grill. And you'll recall we had the same situation there, where the Greenhouse Grill, its predecessor, had an outdoor dining area, and we converted that to year-round use. And there's never in any of these cases been any negative implications at any of those restaurants for parking. And the reasons for that are a number of things. First of all, these are places that have been operating under outdoor permits for 6 months of the year, substantially the same operational pattern. The second thing that we've all found, and this commission and its commitment to dining generally and outdoor dining and the Zoning Board of Appeals, is that the patterns of restaurants in the downtown center are as follows. The luncheon crowd is substantially walkable, especially in the summertime, businessmen and so on and so forth. When there is a need for parking is during the evening hours. And I think what you have to be mindful of when you look at various restaurants, and you have been, is focusing on that evening hour operation. How and what parking exists that will be sufficient beyond what's on site, because all these properties in the centers we know are non-conforming to parking. And in this case, you'd look not only to the street parking, which is fairly substantial in the evening hours, and I know that because I'm down there a lot, but the parking lot across the street, the municipal lot, which in the evening hours, absent the nights when we're having a concert on the green or something, is generally available. So I think what you'd look at in this case and any other cases is any demand for parking that might be occasioned by the conversion for a 6-month period to permanent use. What's the operational pattern of that restaurant been? Has there been any problems during the summertime? Is there sufficient parking available off-site to ensure the commission that there's not going to be a parking problem? Because not every part of every downtown center is the same. Without getting into talking about other streets, there are other streets in the downtown center where there isn't as abundant a parking as there is at this location. So I think what we've shown as a pattern over the years is a lot of support not only for outdoor dining, but then for the conversion of that outdoor dining in those instances where, based upon where those particular areas were located, and again, think of the similarities. With the Grey Goose, you had the parking across the street. With what is now Chelsea, you had that parking next door. And here you have what we offer. So I think it's not like asking somebody who wants to come in and convert an entire restaurant or add double the parking, the patron floor area. Because here we've been operating like this. The same, actually a little bit more patron floor area for a decade, 6 months of the year. And all we're really trying to do is provide something people, for whatever reason, summertime and wintertime, are telling, they like to sit out and enjoy the streetscape. The inside of our restaurant is charming and will remain so, but this is what people like, so we'd like to provide it. And certainly if the aesthetics here in terms of the painting or the brick or something that you'd like us to rethink, we're happy to do that. There's no magic to the white paint job, and this was something we felt not only would structurally be appropriate, but we thought it was attractive. We thought it would add a certain nice ambiance to the building. But we certainly are willing to work with you on that.
Attorney Fallon, I have to seriously disagree with your argument, and I'll tell you why. This town, from the way I see it and the way I think this commission sees it, we offer a great bonus to these restaurants with the outdoor dining, and we're pretty lenient with it in the summertime. And we have serious parking conditions in the summertime. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of parking lots with 15 feet of snow piled up in them that we don't have in the summertime. So now, you make the argument, okay, Oceana, we approve it. Now Centros tells me, you know what, we want to cover our outside patio. And then Archie Moore's, and then Crave, and then Be Good, and all the other restaurants in town. And the next thing you know, we have a disaster on our hands because it was good for this one, so we're going to make it good for this one, and good for this one. And as far as Chelsea goes, that's a permanent structure. And what they do is they have their outside dining, which extends one row of tables, and they have the garage doors that enclose it.
But what I meant, and you may not be recollecting this, when you walk into Chelsea's,
Yeah,
and you walk to the left, and there's...
right, the greenhouse.
That was all outdoor dining.
I know,
Okay.
but it is a permanent structure.
And
It's not a removable tent.
Let me go back to your first point. It gets back to what Commissioner Kennelly asked. You have to look at every application of every type that comes before you on a case-by-case basis. I get that.
Then don't say to me, well, you did it for this one and you did it for that.
That was the last thing I said.
You just said it.
No, no.
It worked
What
with
I
Grey
said
Goose.
was, what I said was that there were two instances
Right.
where you have had the same application and you've allowed the conversion to year-round use. And I didn't mean to imply that there's some sort of precedent, like if you do it for one, you got to do it for all. That's nonsense. What I was pointing out was that the same factors that were applicable to your consideration of those cases have applicability here. And that doesn't mean, and I'm not trying to pick on any other restaurants, because I probably represent half of them, but that doesn't mean if somebody comes down and you're on some side street and there's no other parking around, and you've already been pretty lenient with them, and they have their seasonal outdoor dining, and now they want to make it permanent, I don't think it means anything when you take this property on the corner of Reef and this street here, directly across the street from the municipal lot on it. You got to look at every case individually.
Absolutely, but then...
And in this case, you have a 10-year operational pattern, which for 6 months of the year shows exactly the same square footage being used, actually a little more.
Right.
And there's never been a parking issue at Oceana. And you have...
Oh, yes, there is. There are a lot. Of course, it's a parking issue. And in the summertime, there is too, because Centro takes the public lot by the green.
That's not my, I mean, I
And sometimes backing out of that parking lot on the side is difficult, the way they pack the cars in that parking lot. So there is issues down there. And sometimes I park right in front of your office.
And you're always welcome to.
Thank you.
But, you know, I think what you have here in its essence, and, you know, look, I'm making the pitch, right? But it's from my heart. You got a restaurant operator who's sitting here who's been operating here for 10 years. It's a classic kind of landmark downtown restaurant, but the restaurant business is such that you always want to keep it fresh, you always want to keep it vibrant, you always want to keep it successful. We're responding to two things here. What we want to do in terms of making sure we can be proud of this building, and number two, what our patrons are telling us they'd like to be able to do in terms of where they would enjoy dining. That's not an automatic reason to approve it. But I do think in the tenor of the times, when you have business people here who are willing to make that investment, to continue that commitment, we owe them somewhat the benefit of the doubt if the doubts are supported by, the benefits are supported by facts. We've got a 10-year track record here. We've operated here without any serious incident, and all we're trying to do is take space that you've already approved 6 months of the year and make it accessible at other points in the year.
Commissioner Barrett.
It's a reasonable request, I think.
And Commissioner Canali.
Mr. Fowler, your client is here too, because maybe he could better. I thought we changed our regulations for outdoor dining. We actually permit it from April 1st to October 31st. Is that correct? So it's actually 7 months. I just asked, is he using the full
Oh, yeah.
7 months?
Yes.
So it's 7 months he's using it.
Correct.
He's
So
actually
this
setting
would-
up in April.
This is
if the
all
weather
about
permits.
making an investment so we could use it for the other 5. Correct.
Okay, because you were saying 6, I was wondering, is that
Bad with
useful or
calendars.
not?
No, you're right.
So
7
if the
months.
weather's good, they'll use it in April, and if they can go to the end of
Right,
October.
and to answer the Commissioner Coleman's question too, for those 7 months of the year, a couple of things. You know, weather permitting, it'll still be exposed to outdoor dining, but one of the other benefits we're looking to do here is on those nights in the outdoor dining season where it's rainy and inhospitable, we'll have some manner to protect the patrons too. So that's another benefit here.
Commissioner Canali.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Counsel, question for you. By doing this, if we approve this, are we now adding to the structure and therefore the current control that the commission enjoys and exercises over the outdoor dining? Does that then cease with this approval in your view or not? Here's why. Because it strikes me that from your client's perspective on getting this passed, one of the ways that it would, before you answer, but my thought is that for those who have concerns related to the parking, for example, if this remained as a matter of law under our control on an annualized basis to look at, if it turned out that indeed there became huge headaches because of issues related to snow in the municipal lot or something like that, invalidating that argument you make, which is that this particular restaurant, because of its unique location, being one near ample parking in addition to just what's on the street, we could then look at this when we renewed the applications for outdoor dining and say, well, you know what, we may have to ask you to, we may have to maybe even look at our regs and say, while you have been approved for year-round, this still remains an outdoor space, and we're afraid that those 5 months of the year, we view this with the number of complaints, that this is a problem. So is this going to become part of the structure, or is it going to be subject still to our outdoor dining regs?
2 seconds?
I don't know what he's yelling at. Some guy standing near the wall. I have no idea.
There's not the time for public comment, thank you. We'll let you know when it's available.
You know, I think the essence of the application is it would become, you know, it would be converted to a permanent structure. That's true. And what you have to, again, what I rely on is that would be a bigger leap, I think, to make if, in fact, you hadn't had 10 years of operating in the same manner.
But you can also understand, just from your legal point of view, I would think as an expert in this kind of stuff, that the commission's resistance might be that they might view this as a path then for other restaurants to begin the process of taking what the commission thus far has had annual control over and then make these part of structures that then significantly add to patron space, 20, 30, in your case, almost 45% of additional patron floor area, 12 months of the year, and these questions that, for example, the chairman has raised,
Well, I think the question
have yet to be explored. We have not had.
That gets to the case-by-case determination. I mean, the bottom line is, here, the problem with doing it, treating it as it's seasonal, is it puts the operator, the business, there's a very, very substantial investment here in upgrading this property both aesthetically and functionally. When you get an outdoor dining certificate, it basically, you put a fence up and you put some tables out, and that's fine. But in this case here, if we're trying to send the right message, I think, about trying to keep our downtown, our town, vibrant and welcoming, then you have a very significant investment here, and it's hard, as much as the applicant would be confident that, hey, you're never going to have a problem here, to stand here and say, oh, sure, we'll build this whole thing out at a cost of whatever six-figure it is, and then you could revoke it in a year. We know you'd never do that. And I think based upon the operational pattern here, you know you wouldn't. So the way I think you protect yourself is what I said before. You have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. You have to decide, based upon the patterns of operation, and the area that you're in, whether or not this is a reasonable request. And in my mind, increasing the opportunity to use this same area that we're using 7 months of the year for 5 more months of the year and get the enhancement to the property, and we're open-minded to color and iteration, it's a good benefit for the town.
One last, I appreciate your indulgence. Just to follow this a little bit, you know, I completely understand the investment, and I think it's terrific that restaurants have enough business during this time of the year that they can, you know, want to expand their patron floor. I think it's terrific. But in terms of getting this particular application passed through this commission, where there is significant and vociferous concerns about parking, there just is, there are very heavy concerns about that. It does strike me, was there ever consideration for something maybe somewhat simpler and less expensive as a test to see how this would work out? Because you're asking the commission, some of whom here members are very concerned about issues related to parking, regardless what it is. You're asking them to take on faith that this go this way, as opposed to perhaps exploring this with maybe a somewhat less substantial but a similar shape structure to see how things go. Just a thought.
The only problem with that, I think, is, you know, the operators, my clients, are really committed to doing everything in a really first-class manner. And I think that's important for the town, too, because if we're going to talk about ambiance and improving the streetscape, I don't think you want us throwing something up like a shower curtain, you know, and just not creating what it is that we're trying to create here. If parking is the issue, then as the Zoning Board of Appeals felt, and I hope you will too on consideration, again, it's a question here of, we've been operating this restaurant for over a decade with the interior square footage and 479 square feet of outdoor seasonal dining area for 7 months a year. And all we're asking you to do in exchange for making this investment that we want to make in the downtown is, after a 10-year operating pattern, give us the benefit of the doubt for those extra 5 months. I mean, if in fact, and if in fact we had been here a year and then come running in and say, you know, thanks for that outdoor dining last year, now we want to make it permanent, I could see where there might be some difference. Or if we were on a small side street and I couldn't point to any areas of convenient off-site parking, you might say, I don't know. But here I think it's a perfect confluence. We've been here 10 years. We're not asking to increase the patron floor area from what was allowed seasonally. We're actually making it a little smaller. We are where we are, right across the street from where we are. And I just think it's a reasonable thing to do that will improve and enhance and assure the continued viability of a long-time landmark restaurant in the downtown. And I think that's real important right now. Yes, John.
Just, if you would, just consider the scale, too. I think you all know the restaurant pretty well. It's a very small restaurant. And if you look at the floor plan, if you look at the floor plan that's proposed, you know, there's a stairway and then really just this kind of U shape of seating area here. There'll be a wait station over here and so forth, but you're not talking about a lot more tables, and so you're really not talking about a lot more customers or cars. The scale of it's a lot different than some of the other restaurants that you might be considering in the process here.
I think we've fully discussed it. We hope that, you know, what we're doing here, I think, is ultimately trying to enhance and continue to maintain the vibrancy of a very important part of the downtown. I think it is a very nice enhancement aesthetically. As I said before, any suggestions you make about the aesthetics, be it from paint or anything else, will be not only considered but abided by. You have my assurances. But at the end of the day, I think it gives a nice permanence to this restaurant, and I think the risks are very low because of the long-term operating pattern here and the fact that we're only asking to increase that pattern 5 months of the year.
Commissioner Francis.
Are there any regulations about the bulk coverage, lot coverage, square foot wise? Is it totally ZBA and not TBZ at all, adding all this permanent space?
We're compliant with that.
It's totally ZBA?
The CBA was with respect to setback.
Ms. Francis, we're complying. We're not, this does not put us over coverage. The only thing that this technically did we needed variances beyond the parking for the setbacks. But as I said at the beginning, we were actually reducing the non-conforming to setback. But everything else is compliant.
Thank you, Attorney Fallon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody here from the public who have anything to say on this topic? Nobody? Commissioner Fallon, any rebuttal on the public comment?
I agree with everyone.
That closes the hearing on 70 Reef Road. Next item, 33-35 Beaumont Street, special permit application of Beachside Estates LLC pertaining to the construction of a 4-story mixed-use commercial and residential building in the design commercial district.
Good evening.
Fallon.
Nice to
Welcome
see
back.
you again, Commissioner. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here representing Beachside Estates LLC. The principal of Beachside Estates LLC is Mr. Bob Sabry, a longtime Fairfield resident who is seated in the front row. Also with us tonight, and they'll be making hopefully brief but focused presentations, will be Mr. Neil Jain, who will review with you the existing and proposed site conditions. Mr. Mark Andre, our architect, who will review with you the elevations that we proposed. We have Mr. Bill Kenny here, who will briefly review with you our landscape and lighting plan, and Mr. Steve Cipolla of Frederick P. Clarkson Associates, who will review with you the traffic assessment, impact assessment that's already been submitted. The application is for the property located at 3335 Beaumont Street, and what the application involves is approval of a mixed-use development as provided for under your regulations, consisting of approximately 3,600 square feet of office space to be located on the ground in the first floor, and 3 residential units located on the second and third floor. The property consists of 11,331 square feet and is located totally in the design commercial district. Presently, 2 non-conforming residences are located on the property. The uses that we propose are explicitly permitted pursuant to Section 12.4.3 and 12.418 of the regulations. Indeed, the proposed residential units comply with all the provisions of Section 12.4.18 pertaining to residential units in a mixed-use development. My statement of use indicated we are proposing 17 on-site parking spaces. I apologize, it's 18. And pursuant to Section 28.6.1 of the regulations, we've requested in our application documents that you would allow 3 parking spaces with regard to the residential units. As you are aware, and as the Commission has found in the past with regard to numerous other mixed-use proposals in the commercial districts, you have the right to allow a reduction in the parking as specifically allowed by 28.6.1. And as you found in the past, and as we would believe here, that is reasonable based upon the fact that the residential components, the 3 residential units, will generally be utilizing the spaces substantially during periods when the office tenants are closed after business hours and weekends, thereby ensuring that the 18 parking spaces that we provide will be more than sufficient to meet the needs of this development. I think what I'd like to do at this time before I elaborate further is to call on our team to give you a brief overview of the presentation, the application, and I'll start with Mr. Neil Jain, who will review with you the existing and proposed site conditions. Neil.
Good evening, Neil Jain, owner of Land Surveying Services, Fairfield. What we have in front of you is a site plan, proposed site plan. Currently, we have two-family house there, which will be demolished, and we will have proposed building as shown here in blue, with the commercial downstairs on the first floor, and second and third floor. Upstairs gonna be residential units. We are providing 18 parking spaces. We have enough drainage structures, and the drainage will be running from north to south as it slopes down Beaumont Street. All the oil separators are there, and catch basins, and the overflow will be out to the street. Pretty much that is it. Now, there's the landscaping plan, and Bill Kenny will be addressing that. And if you have any other questions, let us know.
How wide are the parking spaces on the site plan?
How many?
How wide?
They are standard 9 by 20.
9 by 20. That's what our regulation calls for, 9 by 20, right? Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry? Yes, we have,
No question.
we have provided porous paving at, where there's gonna be parking. Where there's a driveway, it's gonna be paved driveway. Otherwise, it's all porous. And that's why we had to reduce the Caltech units, because we had porous paving.
Reduce the what units?
The drainage structures.
Commissioner Corcoran?
I'm sorry, you did receive a letter, I think, for the record from Laura Pooley, because we did work closely with her on this decision in terms of forest paving. I think she sent an email to Mr. Wynn. I'm sorry, and she did send an email to Mr. Wynn. I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk.
I'm looking for the 18th parking space. I see 17.
Well, there was a little typo. I have two number 15. It's actually, there are 18 spaces, so my apologies. That was my.
Could you, well,
If you count,
I see 9 across the back.
okay, 1,
On the right-hand side.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
What'd you say?
To number 15.
I just counted them. I didn't look at the numbers.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what it was.
Oh, I see. You're looking at a different
Yeah, there are
diagram.
two number 15s. That was a typo in my.
I also wanted to, I mean, if we're talking about one space per residence,
That's correct.
so if the residence has 2 cars, where do they put their second car all night?
The regulations, as you know, Commissioner, provide that in a mixed-use residential development in the design commercial district, you can, at your discretion, reduce the required parking by 50%. That is what we're requesting that you do. To answer your question, you've done that, I think, substantially in the past with mixed-use projects, because I think you've been comfortable in your determination that the synergy of the uses, as mixed use contemplates and encourages, is such that you don't want to overpark, and at the same time, to answer your, if all of the residents have 2 cars, which may or may not be likely, but taking that as the assumption, you know, you're still going to have a good synergy in terms of the operations of the business office and the needs of those residences, assuming that they are working during the day and so on and so forth. And it's worked in the past in design commercial districts for mixed-use projects.
Is there any off-site parking nearby?
There's street parking, but there's some street parking.
Please. Attorney Fallon, when you, did they take into consideration the turning radiuses of this parking lot?
Yes, we're going to make, when Mr. Cipolla speaks, he'll make a complete review of not only off-site, but also on-site circulation.
Okay, great. Commissioner Barrett.
Your architect is going to speak, but can I just ask, what's the square footage of these apartments?
He's going to speak, so I
Speak
can,
to that?
yeah.
All right,
Any
good.
other questions for Mr. Jain?
What's the parking requisite for the office space, 15?
Yeah, it would be one for 200.
So there's no flexibility here.
Not without the waiver or the reduction that you're allowed to make.
Commissioner Barrett.
Yeah, I just want to get the numbers straight, Mr. Finance. It's a 3,600 square foot office space,
3,600 square foot of office space, correct.
so you need 18 parking spaces for the office, is that correct?
No, I need, it's business office. It's not professional, so I need 4 per 1,000.
You need 4 per 1,000, so you need 50, okay. I wasn't getting.
Yeah, it's 200 would be if it was medical office.
Okay. I misunderstood your answer to Commissioner
Yeah.
Francis.
No, I need 15.
You need 15, you
And I-
have
and-
15, you have 3, and you're allowing 15 for the office.
And 3 for
and
the
only
residents.
3 for the residents, and that's based on an assumption that the residents can park in other spaces. at different
It's
times.
really, the request is based upon the same assumption that is built into the regulation when it was adopted. When this regulation was adopted, and way back, the mixed use, going back about 15 years, there was a desire to provide the commission with discretion to reduce the residential parking, which you've fairly consistently done in a mixed use facility because of the various operating synergies of the different uses.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jain will remain in attendance, obviously, we're not going to let him go. I call on Marc Andre, who will give you an overview of the elevations and also the interior floor plan, and in doing that, you'll certainly answer the various questions on the size
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission and staff. First, I want to say Happy New Year. And I also want to congratulate all of you guys who got reelected, and also want to say thank you for serving our town. I also want to say a special thank you to the PNC staff and other town's employees who actually guided us in crafting this application. My name is Marc Andre. I'm a principal at Mark G. Andre Architects. I practice architecture out of Fairfield, Connecticut. I have with me today my 2 staffs, Ms. Burback and Mr. Williams. Ms. Burback graduated from Roger Williams and currently lives in Bridgeport. And Mr. Williams graduated from Hampton University and also lives in Bridgeport. We as architects and designers, once our clients' needs, the basic needs and the basic zoning requirements are met, our job is to explore architectural aspect of our project that is bold, that captures one's imagination. This proposal reflects our interests, that has a certain keenness which may not necessarily in tune with some, depending on their architectural preferences. We as architects are extremely lucky to have a fine client that encourages us to explore ideas, investigate, research, and suggest use of materials formed to craft the unexpected. Yes, this proposal is personal to us. It's our professional vision, cope with our client needs to provide office, residential space at 3335 Beaumont Street. We envision a building that is clad with materials commonly found in nearby buildings, in properties throughout the downtown, and in proposals that were recently approved by this commission. The materials that we are using is not unique to this proposal. Our composition is. We believe good design, while subjective, is good business. Enclosing space with 4 walls and a roof that solely seek to meet client needs and building code and zoning regulation is not enough. We want to create a building that is vibrant, exciting, primarily to its owner and occupants, while reflecting our strong artistic interest in using foreign common materials to shape space that can be incubator for live, work, play in our vibrant community. And with that, I want to say thank you and
Yes, Commissioner Kennelly.
First off, Mr. Ari, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate them very much. It is a thankless job, so thanks. The questions for you are this. I'm concerned about the issue of the harmony test under the special permit. But by harmony, I want you to know that I was listening to you as I was looking at my phone. I wasn't like texting. What I was doing was looking at Google Maps to try to get at the street view, to get a better sense. I should have had a stronger sense. I apologize. It's been a kind of crazy day in our house. But my question for you is it does strike me that this particular structure, is going to have is going to significantly, potentially can significantly alter the balance on this street, in that it appears that there are post-road facing commercial enterprises on Beaumont, and then beyond those initial ones, I think it was pointed out to me by Commissioner Francis that one of the buildings across the street from 3335 might have been the old DeVore's Bakery.
that's correct.
Thanks, Commissioner Francis. So what I'm concerned about what I'm asking you this question for is the architect is, I wonder if you could get into a little bit how you view, for the record, that this structure will establish the kind of transition in the neighborhood between commercial and residential that you think is appropriate and is in scale and is of type, that it fits the surrounding architecture. Could you talk about how you came to develop that? I assume that harmony test is a part of granting a special permit. Talk about that if you could.
Well, there's the brick building that you are referring to is actually directly across the street from our project. So while our building may not reflect exactly, is not a replica of the brick building, interestingly, some of the materials that we're using are found throughout in the area. From some, there's some brick we're proposing at the base. We have some storefront windows that is found nearby. We have what playing with the residential aspect in the area. We have kept our building with a combination of gable and shed roofs to bring some of the residential feeling to the commercial building. And we also try to make the building. Our intent was not to create like a cookie cutter type building. And we don't believe that shaping a building, whether it has mixed use or commercial use, residential and office, that it should look like a replica exactly of what a residential building is. But at the same time, we were very mindful of the residential area. There's a mixture of some gable buildings there. And so we use some of these forms to craft our building.
Commissioner, well,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
okay, Commissioner Coleman.
I think Commissioner Kennelly covered much of what I was going to say. I was struggling with the same thing. I think it is an attractive and interesting building. I think that I'm interested in how you see this fitting into an essentially colonial-looking neighborhood.
Well, the building across the street is not a colonial building.
No, but it's also on the post road, and, we
It's pretty,
view those
that
more
may be
as
true.
commercial.
That may be true. It has a frontage on the post road, but the entire width of the property actually is directly across the street from our property. So in a sense, if we were to remove the building in front of us, it probably would have been the same size property. And I was referring to the West Fair TV building that is directly in front of, that separates us from the post road.
Mr. Andre, what I think they're trying to convey is this. As Attorney Fallon said in the previous application, this commission is very sensitive to the aesthetics of downtown Fairfield. We have a certain colonial New England look to it. It's the heart of Fairfield. To see a contemporary building downtown, Beaumont Street, 1 block off of the Post Road. The way I see it doesn't meet the harmony test for the neighborhood. I mean, we have a look in Fairfield that we're very sensitive to, and we try to maintain it. So, well, I'm just trying to, I mean, not that it's not an attractive looking building, I think it would look fantastic on Sacred Heart University campus, but I'm just having a funny, a difficult time trying to see this pictured off the Post Road in downtown Fairfield.
Can I speak to the harmony test?
Yes.
Because I think that's important. Speak to the harmony test. First of all, I think it's important to keep in mind that this property is located in the design commercial district. It's business property. And although I have the greatest respect for the chairman, I don't know that our downtown's beautiful, but I don't know that it's particularly well served over the next 30 years if everything is a cookie cutter, colonial, whatever. I think there's room, and if there's room for it anywhere, it should be in the design commercial district for some architectural originality and something different. Different and diversity is good, not only among people, but also among architectural elements. Now, maybe that doesn't work in the neighborhood design district, where you have some rightful greater consideration for matters of harmonization with residential areas. But if you're ever going to look towards allowing architectural expression, the design commercial district is where you would do it. I will also say, if I can just approach, we handed in with our application a petition. This is what you got, but I have enhanced it. That was signed by all the abutters. And this is sort of color keyed now a little better than what we gave you with the application, but it's the same document. So again, I think if the issue here is harmonization, which is a little bit subjective, it's sort of like beauty being in the eyes of the beholder, some consideration should be given not only to that, but also to the fact that Mr. Savory, who's a longtime resident of the neighborhood, of the town, he spent months, speaking to neighbors, keeping them abreast of what he was doing, and with particular attention to the abutters. Okay? But just on the harmonization thing, without being argumentative, I do think it's important to keep in mind that this is in the design commercial district.
Can I ask a question?
Commissioner Barrett's.
Sorry, Commissioner, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go for it.
I had another question, not just about the harmony, but could you talk, Mr. Andre, about the decision to make this a 4-story building? Sorry, when all...
I mean, it's 3 apartments plus an office, and the design aside, this is in a design commercial district, but it's frontage on a residential street. And I know 4-story buildings are allowed in a design commercial district, but they're certainly not allowed in a residential district. So, why 4 stories? Why not 2 stories or 3 stories?
I think we were trying to provide an application that would comply with the regulations as they're promulgated, and that's what we did.
Commissioner Kennelly.
Mr. Fallon, I'm going to ask this more to you because I have to kind of justify this in terms of past decisions I've made. And let me give you an example. You've talked about this potential building. It's in a commercial district, and you're correct. But let me give you an example of how the commission generally, just as we've talked a little while ago about how they deal with outdoor dining, some are very positive, some more concerned about parking. Here in this case, I would give you an example of, if you're familiar with the corner of Stilson Road across the street, but just slightly below the Angus at Fairfield Woods Road, there is an office building. It has an orthodontist, it has dialysis. Now, it turns out that building, for example, has come to us on a number of occasions, the applicants there, have come to us on a number of occasions with sign plans that have been rejected in a number of cases. And the rationale for the commission in those cases was that while indeed the building was in the district that was appropriate for it, all around it were residential buildings, that across the street was a residential building, that next to it was a residential building, and that to some extent the owner, while also the owners were all longtime Fairfield residents and had great investment in Fairfield, they also had a responsibility to see to it that what they presented just in their sign plan, and this is a very conventional looking colonial building if you're familiar with it, was toned down in a way that it respected the surrounding and harmonized with the surrounding residential neighborhood. You've come to us with, Mr. Andre's design is exciting and interesting and has been pointed out, but here you are bringing us a building that, if you look right down the street, as I was looking, on, the Google, on the earth here, as you look right down Beaumont Street, it looks as though this is visiting from some other planet when you look at all the little houses that are right next to it. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it looks like it's dropped in, and then if I look on the house next to it, and the house down the street there, and the house across the street, it does strike me that this is you're asking the commission, which has had a fairly high bar when it comes to what is acceptable, when it comes to the harmony test, when you're abutting a part of a residential neighborhood, you're asking us to really, it would seem to me, I don't want to use the word lower the bar, but certainly look at a more liberal view of what has generally been the standard when it came to what we would allow for presentation of a commercial or office building right in a residential neighborhood.
Well,
So,
I guess the
explain
only,
why.
I take two answers.
Sure.
I take a little bit of exception of saying a commercial building right in the center of a residential neighborhood. It's not a residential neighborhood, it's a commercial neighborhood that has a number of residential uses in it, okay? And it is also a building or a location that is it's completely proximate to the Post Road, which is the main commercial artery. Having said that, we believed and do believe that the building, atypical of a typical office building, would be more in keeping and harmonious and transitional with some of those residential properties. But we still want to design a building that was in accordance with the regulations in terms of as permitted. So we don't find the building to be unattractive. And if you do, you're going to tell us that, and we're going to hear that, and we're going to have to consider that.
All right.
I just don't know, though, if the issue, maybe we should focus somewhat, too, on the concept of mixed use for this neighborhood, and the concept for mixed use in compliance with the regulations, so that if we're going to get feedback, we'll know. But I think this is the reason we adopted mixed use was to encourage this kind of development in areas that had some transitional character. So I think it's important you let us know how you feel about mixed use at this location. If you don't like the architecture, then in the work session, you're going to tell us. And we're going to be listening to that. But at the same time, I think it's important to defend what the regulations provide for here, because there's nothing in this application that doesn't comply with the regulations. And if you're concerned about the parking, and you're not disposed in this instance to grant the 50% reduction, which you have done substantially in the past, let us know that. Because what that means is then we'll have to consider either reducing the number of residential units or reducing the size of the office space. We want to work with the commission here. We honestly did believe that this design is exciting, and it is more transitional than something that looks like the Fairfield Public Library, as beautiful a building as that is. So there's really a question here of what's transitional and what isn't. But we want to work with you, but I think it's important we don't lose sight of the fact that this is a commercially zoned piece of property, that the residences that are located on it and some in adjacency to it are non-conforming uses, and that this commission has a long history, going back 20 years, of encouraging mixed use, which is finally getting off the ground now in this district. Let me call on Mr. Kenny to kind of review with you the landscaping plan and the lighting plan.
Okay. This ain't gonna wait for a while.
Good evening, I'm Bill Kenny, I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates here in Fairfield. I'm a registered landscape architect and a consulting ecologist. I was retained to prepare a planting plan and assist with the development of the lighting plan. Planting plan is really quite a simple, elegant, sustainable design using all native plants. It's low maintenance, clean and simple. We're gonna have massings of native ground covers, native grasses and other ground covers, as well as some massings of native shrubs. There's a front of the building primarily, and then we'll have some shade trees. There's American elms, native shade trees. That's pretty much.
Are we shade trees in the parking lot? One tree for every 10 spaces, scattered throughout, is that how we worded it?
The intent is to shade the portion.
And how many shade trees do you have in that parking lot?
So we have
One?
three in the front, one in the back.
Three in the front, one in the back. So it's one for every 10, and we're showing 18 parking spots, so we're talking one shade tree for the 10. Okay, all right, thank you. We have any questions? Commissioner Corcoran.
So just more on the shade tree. So those three in the front are considered, you're considering that they're in the parking lot?
That, yes. Well, the four are part of the development.
Well, it's one shade tree for every 10 spots.
Don't they need to be near the parking spots?
Yes, which is why he's showing the one in the back corner, I guess, as the one tree for the 18 spots. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got it. The other thing, I just was very happy to see you're using native plants. Not all the plants we see show that. Thank you.
Okay.
You received a traffic analysis with regard to this project prepared by Frederick P. Clark and Associates. Mr. Steven Sapola is here tonight to briefly overview that and answer any question you might have. He also did a site circulation analysis, and I'm going to hand out while he comes forward a document that he'll refer to.
Good evening. For the record, Steve Sapola, Frederick Clark Associates. We conducted the traffic study for the proposed mixed-use development. The site is located here. We looked and analyzed the intersection of Post Road at Beaumont Street, which is a stop sign controlled intersection. We conducted our manual turning movement counts in June of 2015.
I'm just going to move this over a little closer.
Okay.
So that when you want to work with it.
Oh, thank you. We conducted our turning movement counts in June of 2015 from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. We summarized those traffic volumes, and we also provided those traffic volumes to the Connecticut Department of Transportation Planning Department to review, and they approved our base existing traffic volumes for 2015. The design year was chosen that it will be built and fully occupied in 2017. Again, we discussed with Connecticut Department of Transportation Planning, and they advised us to use a 0.5% per year annual growth rate, which we applied. We also accounted for, there is still some vacant space at a development at 1 Sasco Hill Road, which is about between a quarter to half a mile west of the intersection. So we added that and added the growth rate to get our no-build condition without this site. Then we, from our Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation handbook, we calculated what the 3,600 square feet of office space and 3 apartments would generate, and that would generate a total of 8 vehicle trip ends during the weekday morning and 7 vehicle trip ends during the weekday afternoon. We distributed those traffic volumes to the intersection and added those to our no-build condition to get our build condition with the proposed site. And we conducted a capacity analysis both for the intersection of US Route 1 at Beaumont Street and also at the proposed site egress. And it was found that between the no build without the development and build with the development, that there will be no deterioration in level of service and a very minimal increase in delay exiting the side street. And the proposed site egress will work at acceptable level of service. We also looked at accident data, both for the intersection of US Route 1 at Beaumont Street and also for the entire length of Beaumont Street. The intersection of US Route 1 at Beaumont had a total of 3 accidents over 3 years. And along Beaumont Street, there was a total of 2 accidents over a 2-year period.
Thank you.
Okay. What John handed you, I put together using the civil engineering plan to show internal circulation and signage. The proposal is for a entrance only on the south side of the property with a counterclockwise circulation around the property and the exit only driveway on the north side of the building. We're proposing to have arrow striping showing the circulation and the appropriate one-way signs at the entrance. Also a one-way sign at the end of the aisle to direct the traffic to the exit, and to have a stop or stop sign and a do not enter sign at the proposed egress. And I also highlighted in red so you can see it better the 18 parking spaces, which all meet the regulations. We believe that the internal circulation of the site will function appropriately and safely.
Can you go back to this chart right here?
Figure 2?
Yeah, I have one question about this. Because we were talking about before on-street parking.
Yes.
And I noticed on Beaumont Street, on the left side, you have no parking anytime signs. What is that, for the parking lot?
Yeah, out on Beaumont Avenue, there is no parking anytime signs. Just south of the parking lot for the corner property, there's
Right.
2 no parking anytime signs. And then there's a no parking sign adjacent to the property adjacent to ours on the corner of Post Road. But for the remainder of the street, there's no any signage for parking.
Yeah, the issue I'm having is we want 1 spot per apartment, and on the one side of the building, we have no parking. Across the street, no parking anytime. And then what happens is we expect this building to park in front of these people's homes as overflow, which I think is kind of unfair, and also considering the fact there are no sidewalks, either to begin with, or from, looks like from this overhead on this street too. So, you know, we're
Yes,
kind of
correct.
like asking the neighbors here, saying, hey, we're gonna park in front of your house because we have a parking issue on our own property, because we're only allowing 1 spot per tenant. So anybody who does come and visit has to park in front of these people's homes, which is kind of unfair, I'm thinking, to these people.
You're right. And I agree, I think what we... You're right. And so here's what I think what should be done there, and I alluded to it before. If that's a concern of the commission, and I respect your discussing it, then clearly a condition of approval here could be that the waiver of the 50%, as the regulations allow you, is not going to be made.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 residential units are going to have to provide a total of 6 spaces.
Right.
And that would mean we'd have to reduce the size of the building by 600 square feet.
Okay.
Because I I can't talk out of both sides of my mouth. So I can't tell you, hey, this complies with your regulations, it's in the design commercial district, it complies, and they say, yeah, but we'll waive those 50% of the spaces. So that's all, that's how we would approach that. We provide 6 spaces as your regulations require, 2 for each residential use, and that means we reduce the size of the building by 600 square feet to make sure the site plan is still totally compliant with your regulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions on the traffic study? Nope.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McAleese.
Let's find my reference. Could you explain the, there's no, I guess it's on the summary sheet, there's no number on the page. Well, I guess it's page 1. Vehicle trip ends. For the residential spaces, there are 3 residential spaces, but they only generate 2. What, could you clarify the vehicle trip ends, what that means and how that works?
Okay. We get estimates on site traffic generation based on land use from the Institute of Transportation Engineering Site Traffic Generation Handbook. And for apartments, the rate for apartments, you times that rate by your number of apartments, and it comes out to 2 apartments during a peak hour. That's not saying that's how many people leave the apartment total during the morning and total during the afternoon. It's during the 1-hour period. So not everyone's going to leave their apartment during a 1-hour period.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few housekeeping items before I summarize. Obviously, we had a code enforcement meeting here on this project in June of 2015. All the comments referred to have been noted, and the submitted plans are consistent with the input we received at that session. You do have Laura Pooley's email. We met extensively with the engineering department. There is, if I can toot my client's horn, a lot of good things happening with this application from an environmental standpoint in terms of the pervious pavement and other aspects of things that we worked with Laura collaboratively on. So we think that strongly benefits the application. Obviously, we've reviewed this carefully with the fire marshal to ensure fire access and fire code compliance, and they have confirmed that. I think the application, as I said before, this commission has been strongly supportive of mixed use. It's embodied in your plan of conservation and development. Your goals in the plan of conservation and development include additional housing opportunities should be encouraged through mixed use provisions of the zoning regulations. We're consistent with that. And it's also consistent with goals involving diversification of housing accommodations. Apartment development should be encouraged, relate to convenience for shopping, transportation, schools, recreation. So we think all that is very good. This is not a developer who's coming in and out of the town. He's a Fairfield native, longtime resident. We want to make this work, and we think it should work because this is an area that begs for mixed use. I can accept, although we don't agree, if the commission has concerns about the architectural design, which I happen to think, as I've said before, is a positive and would be transitional, but we want to work with the commission on that. But what we are asking the commission to send a message to us so that we can do that is that the concept here of mixed use with an application that totally complies with your regulations for the design commercial district for that mixed use in his own words, zone for that, is something that we can all endorse. Because I think that's not only reasonable and legally fair to the client, I think it's also a good thing for the community because we should be encouraging mixed use in these areas in the design commercial district. So we'll be pleased to answer any questions you or members of the public might have, but we hope you will consider this application favorably.
Thank you. Any questions for Attorney Fallon? Commissioner Francis?
We never got the fire commission comments, but the fact that you put this on the agenda means they were all met.
The code enforcement minutes?
Yeah, it says, yeah. I know, it says comments will be forthcoming. But you wouldn't have put it on the agenda if...
We did meet
The
with the fire
access,
marshal, but I
yeah.
understand you might want something from him. I can't, but we did meet with.
We'll
the
ask
fire marshal.
staff to
Yeah.
get that next week.
Mhm.
Commissioner Kennelly?
And the shield, the utilities on the roof are all shielded?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennelly?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fallon, I want to just probe that last bit on your conclusion, because I want to understand, I want us to be in accord as I'm trying to reason out what the appropriate message is to send to your client in terms of how we proceed with this. And let me explain, and I want just to get your reaction so I can better understand.
Appreciate that.
When I think of the purpose of mixed use over the last few years the 8 years I've been, plus 9 years on the commission here, I have voted in favor of mixed use, especially in the Post Road area where I have supported clients' applications, most notably Cleveland Holdings, for example, with Brickwalk. But in those examples, what I was attempting to do by supporting mixed use in the Post Road commercial, area, that commercial area on the bordering the Post Road, was to add more residential to the commercial area to increase neighbors in that area, residents in that area on the Post Road. It would seem to me that what you're describing here would be an extension of that theory, which would be that I would want to further move into the residential area which surrounds this property, commercial property, and that would be the mixed use here. And so that would seem to be a different philosophy than the one I've been supporting these years. So I want to understand what the rationale is for that.
When the commission adopted the mixed-use regulations, it was not adopted as an overlay zone in some specific areas. You allowed and you have permitted mixed use in both in all of the business districts, center design commercial, and neighborhood, okay? And the reason that we did that, because I was involved in that, was there was a sense that in any commercial zone, the added vibrancy that is brought by some residential occupancy is important. Now, that certainly translates very well and has, with this commission's guidance and support, in the center area, and we've seen that. But it's an equally as reasonable a premise anywhere you've designed designated property as commercially zoned. So the fact that you are, and I understand the commission has some sensitivity because this commercially zoned property has, in some proximity, residential uses. I get that. So that makes mixed use superior to just an office building, because you are bringing in residents. And this area, just like other areas that you made for mixed use, this is very well transitional for people who want to live in proximity to our shops and our restaurants. This fits all those bills. So I don't think you should be shy about what's been in your regulations for 20 years. You permit mixed use anywhere in the commercial zones, subject to satisfying your regulations. This is a good spot for mixed use, and I think it would work very well. Is it a different spot than the Brickwalk area? Sure, but that doesn't diminish the fact that mixed use is a good conceptual use here.
Just what, so, but the key point being, because you were a driver behind this, is it struck me always that the ultimate goal of mixed use was to put more residents in commercial areas. Sure. Here it would seem we already have a perfectly good number of residents right down that block, or in fact surrounding that property, next door, across the street, and then all down Beaumont Street. So it seemed like that kind of concern, the residents would ensure that, it protects in things like crime and just those kinds of things. It's better when people live in an area. It's not a desolate, empty area. Right now we have a residential use there, and, we're succeeding, it would seem, in terms of what the value of residential does there, as opposed to an area that would be more like the Post Road, where having some folks who lived upstairs from, the restaurant is a nice thing, because there's eyes on the street, and there's
I think there were two premises to residential, to mixed use, and there still are. One of them is what you just articulated, and that would be to try to bring more people, especially in the center area, to a kind of, I remember we talked in those days, it's about South Norwalk. Remember, we were all, this is what we need. So that's true. But the other thing, if you go back and you look at the old minutes, was there was also a desire to put mixed use as a use in here for potential uses in areas that would be more transitional, since we're talking about that. Okay, I have an area that we've zoned for commercial use. It's proximate to residential. Mixed use is a good transition there. Yes, you can have your office and stuff, but we want to keep some character of neighborhood here, so even though you're in the commercial district, we're going to welcome residential into there as well. So I think it works both ways.
So transition is a key.
That's right.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Attorney Fallon. This is going to open up to the public comment part of this application. I ask you, whoever wants to come up, please come on up, speak. I ask you to be brief, state your name and your address, and please keep your comments to this application. Thank you. Take your time. Just be brief when you get there. Okay.
Jan Reber, 85 Beaumont Street. I have a petition to hand out and also a handout for all of you. And I wonder if while I do that, if it wouldn't be useful for all the residents who are here in opposition to stand so you know who they are.
So noted, thank you.
I think it's important because the idea of collaboration with neighbors is clearly something that has not occurred here.
Jan Rebar, Beaumont Street.
I appreciate the opportunity to be heard on this application. I'm especially grateful to be able to agree with Attorney Fallon, something that I very rarely am able to do. He's told you that mixed use is both permitted and ideal use for Beaumont Street property. I don't necessarily disagree with that. He cited the town plan to you, and I agree with him, and I agree with the wisdom imbued in the town plan. The problem is that Attorney Fallon's failed to note an important underlying principle of the town plan, one that's repeated over and over again in the plan. And I'm not going to quote everything that's in the handout, but I want to note that the town plan says there's, quote, a need for a satisfying community design, unquote, viable neighborhood structures within a strong community framework to maintain town identity. The plan says there's a need to recognize existing residential conditions and to preserve and enhance residential character. That clearly is not the case with this design. The intersection of commercial districts and residential neighborhoods is a difficult area to maintain the town's planned lofty goals. And that's why there's an emphasis on transition from commercial to residential. If we look at the area from Sasko Hill Road to Thorpe Street, and I've provided you with photographs, we can see that this transition's been accomplished quite well over the years. You'll see that there are 8 buildings from Sasko Hill to Thorpe that are transitional from commercial to residential. All of those buildings blend seamlessly into the neighborhood. One that does the least is Granville Printing on Granville. That's a legacy building. It's been there since the 1950s. I believe it was originally a Knights of Columbus, or it served some other community function in the past. I hope when you compare those 8 photographs to what we can reasonably expect as transition in our neighborhood to what's being proposed here, you can see that there's just no reasonable comparison. There's also no reasonable comparison to Beaumont Street itself, nor on the Post Road. There are 3 three-story buildings on the Post Road within the vicinity of Beaumont Street. One was built in the late 19th century as a residence, the other in the early 20th century, that's the Wilsons. The other in the early 20th century as a residence, that's the French bakery that's been expanded. And then there's a newer building down the street. There's no point of reference on Beaumont. This building sits across the street from a home built in 1864. There's a Victorian built in 1879 down the street, and another built in 1904. It's also across the street from a bungalow-style home that's a common feature in the neighborhood. And in fact, the next street over is called Bungalow because that's been a common feature of this area. The town plan encourages you to consider, quote, a satisfying community design through proper relationship of factors such as materials, scale, site, function, landscape, and location. The design, the materials, and very importantly, the scale of this proposed mixed-use development are outside the scope of what's contemplated in the town plan. And I would note that with their landscaping plan, you'll be able to, this building will loom over not only Beaumont Street, but over the Post Road as well. I'm not suggesting there's no room for evolution in design. But coherence and compatibility need to be organic in any new design. The town recently expanded downtown streetlights and brick sidewalk inserts out to Beaumont. At our request, they replaced the damaged cemetery fence on the post road with a traditional wrought iron fence. The harmony of this area as an extension of downtown would be damaged if a used mixed-use building that's out of character is allowed to loom over Beaumont and the adjacent area of the post road. I'd like to briefly discuss parking. Here again, I agree with Attorney Fallon that you sometimes reduce parking requirements for mixed-use buildings. The logic he offered to you, though, is problematic. Beaumont's located near the downtown train station. Apartments in the area are all advertised as walk to the train. I've included a current advertisement for an apartment in your packet. Apartments are desirable in this area because of their proximity to the station. Apartment dwellers are often newer town residents at the bottom of the multi-year wait list for parking at the train station. Also, we're in the 21st century. Many people work at home. A lot of people in Beaumont work at home. All of this indicates that more cars remain in the neighborhood during the workday than you may find in some other parts of town. Beaumont has the added burden that employees of some post road businesses without adequate parking park on Beaumont. For instance, the area in proximity to the applicant's property is a parking venue for employees of the dry cleaner that's located directly across the street. I'm almost finished. If you indulge me for one more quick topic, Attorney Fallon's written submission notes the inclusion of the neighbors in collaborative planning. I think you've seen from the petition and from the neighbors here that really did not occur to any great extent. Most neighbors were not even aware of the plans for this location until this month. There were 2 signatories on your petition from Beaumont. One of them is actually not the property owner, it's the mother of the property owner. Neither the property owner nor her mother live in Fairfield. The property across the street is one of those like the one on Sasko Hill Road that has a sliver of commercial. And so there's good reason for that property owner to want to see commercial here because it keeps their property value high. There's strong neighborhood opposition to this application. We really hope that you will give consideration to not accepting this design at this time. Lastly, a couple technical points. The curb radius at the street doesn't look to be 15 feet, which you require by 28.11.2.4. I think the applicant should address that. Also, there's been no mention of property value. Do you think that the value of the residential property on Beaumont Street will go up or down based on this design, this neighborhood? It's something that you need to consider. Lastly, that's from 25.7.7 of your regulations. Lastly, as to traffic, I didn't hear the traffic expert mention a grade for the stop sign. Anybody who tries to make a left-hand turn at 7:30 or 8:30 in the morning on that street, you can have your coffee will be cold if you don't drink it. So normally there's a grade given for that. I didn't hear him do that here. I think the grade is F, but it would be nice to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Gildersleeve. I'm on 153 Beaumont. I'm in the middle of the street. I'm pretty much going to go off the cuff. I also truly appreciate all your service. And I'd also like to say to you guys too that it's not that I am not interested in it probably developed. I think it's an awesome drawing. I think you can do better though. And I think that's what's important to be said here, is that this just is not right. The other piece that you have to remember about this particular location that's unique is it's a bus stop for middle school and high school right at the end of that street. So that's another factor that has to be considered in how this is sized and thing. So personally, from what I've heard today, I'm good with seeing the scope reduced and the aggressiveness of the design reduced. And then we're talking something. I love living in town. We've brought the street lights down to the end of town. We've created a look with those street lights and the brick. You've seen Tequila Restaurant has a funky little edge to it, but it still sits with the community. And that's all that I think we're asking here, okay?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Hogue. I'm Vice Chair of Fair Plan, which is Fairfielders Protecting Land and Environment, and we've been asked to just speak on behalf of the group that has come before you. Just that there is a concern by the neighbors. They're obviously very proud of their neighborhood, and it's not that this design is bad, it's that the context is what there's a concern over. And we hope that you will take that into account, that this very proud group of neighbors wants to do what they can to make sure that they have a really wonderful neighborhood to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh.
Hi, Brian Parent. I'm at 58 Beaumont Street. I pretty much agree with a lot of the things that have been said. And sorry if I'm repeating it, but just was looking at some of the documentation and information. With that 25.7.7 that was referenced, development shown has to be of character to protect property values. 58 Beaumont Street, I closed September, October. And when I look at this plan, I mean, there's no way that it would be protected. So I'm also agreeing that we're not, saying that nothing should be developed there, but I think it's just that, this particular building and maybe, 4 stories is permitted, but I, would have to say, please consider something that would transition better and hold the property values. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Garofalo, 9 Beaumont Place. I've heard a couple of words used over and over again, transitional and harmonic. And transitional means to me to bring one point together with another point. And it looks like the design that's here is so much bigger and so much more expansive than anything that is on the post road, and so much bigger and so much more expansive of anything that's behind it, which is all residencies. So to me, it doesn't fit the definition of transitional, nor does it fit the definition of harmonic. It takes me sometimes at least 10 minutes to get out of the street at Beaumont just because of the traffic on the post road. I heard it was going to be about 2 years to build this property. I wonder how many trucks and cars are going to be on Beaumont Place, creating even more traffic and disruption. There's also kids walking up because of the bus stop there. I think 1 car per unit is ridiculous. There's going to be more cars than that. Probably most of these people are going to be going to the train or working from home or not leaving their house exactly at 7:30 so that other people can come in and then use the parking spaces for commercial use. So that means that there's going to be more cars on Beaumont Street parking all the way down the street, maybe halfway down the street, going to these commercial businesses. So I think it needs to be scaled down. I think it needs to be transitional and harmonic and improve the neighborhood, not degrade it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Frank Sterna. I have the property at 90 Granville. I've been running my business out of that property since 1999. I've been in town since 1988. And I don't really, have an opinion on the design or anything, but I think something else probably could go there. But the question I have and why I'm here is I'd like somebody to show me where the property line is there and how that would be handled in that.
Just address the
I'm
commission
sorry.
for that.
Yeah.
If you have any public comment, I'm sure we'll ask later on, okay?
Okay, that's it.
That's it? You want to ask him?
Mr. James, you want to just address the property line? Once again, my name is Neil Jain. The rear property line is here. Frank's property is right behind it. And I think one of the concerns he may have is there's a chain link fence that is in the back of my client's property. And there's a little notation over there that says that replace chain link fence as necessary. Sometimes what happens is, during construction time, minor damages happen, chain link fence can be torn down or not torn down. If it is, then it will be replaced. That's why that notation is there.
Okay.
The mutual understanding between the two owners, if they want to replace the chain link fence
Well,
with
let's
something else, they can do that.
Bring that up, don't worry about it. Okay? Sure, come on. I don't want to get into a back and forth, so you could come up, that's fine. And if they have anything to say, they'll address it later during the rebuttal part of it, that's all. I'm not going to go back and forth now.
Well, that's not my intention. My intention is just to
No,
find
no,
out
no,
where.
you're fine, go
where the,
ahead.
Yeah. What I'm looking at is where they have the property line here.
Right.
Now, when they take out this fence, this was moved because of a tree.
Okay.
At one point. There was another tree over here. If this is the property line, they're going straight this way. When they put the fence back, they want it to go straight along the property line.
So the tree was removed on your property?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I know I had approached, if I could just one other clarification point. Some of the paperwork references 23 and 33 Beaumont, and some of it references 33 and 35.
The application's
So
3335.
It's
but
33,
take a look at the
35.
plan.
Just because when you look on the GIS map, there's a vacant lot on 23, and then 33 is where the existing structure is. So just to be clear that
We'll
those are
check
the
that with
two-
our staff.
Okay. Just that it's not encroaching into, say, yeah, or no, 33, I believe, is where the structure is. 23 is where the vacant area is.
This is 33 and 35, right? Yeah, 33 and 35.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Attorney Fallon.
Appreciate your kind attention, and I won't belabor this for you or the public. I think there's two separate things at work here. One is we've proposed a mixed-use development that is in fact permitted in the zone, and it's totally compliant with the regulations. And I can say totally compliant now based upon the record statement I made about the withdrawal, the request for the reduction in parking for the residential units, understanding that means we'd have to reduce the office component by 600 square feet. So I think that's an important thing that we all need to keep in mind. We promulgate zoning regulations for a reason. And I've heard this commission speak more eloquently than me. It's sort of a contract. You're laying out a roadmap. You're telling a property owner what they can and they can't do. That's why this commission generally abhors zone changes. If this were residentially zoned property, then this application would never be here, certainly not under my watch, because I know you'd make quick work of it. But this is zoned explicitly for the use that we ask you to approve. The second issue is harmonization, and I respect the respectful comments of all the neighbors with regard to that. But I think we have to keep a few things in mind. Harmonization is a two-way street. And when your property is zoned for a specific use in the most intense commercial district we have, certainly you can take some consideration under your special permit standards on this question of transition and harmonization, but you always have to keep in mind that this is the permitted use. This is what's allowed, and the fact that there has to be some transition, I think, is somewhat diminished when you're talking about a piece of property that's already zoned for commercial use. Having said that, Mr. Sabry, I've said a number of times, is a Fairfield resident of long standing. He probably knows a lot of these folks in the room. We certainly want to work with him, the residents, and the members of this commission. And if we hear in your work session, and we'll be all ears, that you would like us to consider some other approach to the aesthetics then even though we are proud of this design, we're going to listen to you. Because once this application is over, Mr. Savory is still going to be in the town, he's still going to be in the neighborhood. But we would ask you, in whatever feedback you give, to be strongly supportive of the concept here of mixed use in some reasonable scale to what your regulations allow. Because there's nothing here by way of the scale and mass of this building that's not totally consistent with what you say is permitted for this use in this zone at this location. I think we can all come out to a good place here. Transitional use, as I said to Mr. Kennelly, has multifaceted benefits, and in this particular case, it is to provide, from a use standpoint, some transitional opportunity between an intensely commercial area and an area with very nice residential homes. We think we can do that. We think the concept of the mixed use here helps achieve that, and I hope you'll send us a positive message so that we can eventually get this across the finish line in a manner that the commission can be proud of, my client can be proud of, and the neighbors can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will close the hearing on 3335 Beaumont Street, and I will adjourn the meeting.